call to order the June 2025 meeting of the Special Committee on University Workforce of the University of Minnesota Board of Regents. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so
Good
much
afternoon.
Thanks to everyone who's joining us in the West Committee Room. While today's meeting is not being live streamed, the recording will be uploaded and archived to the board's YouTube channel after today's meeting. Our first item on today's agenda is to hear from labor represented employees. We are going to hear from Christina Gallup, Associate Professor of the Department of Earth and Environmental Science and President of the University Education Association at the Duluth campus, Katie LaPlante, Carpenter and General Foreperson, Minnesota State Building and Construction Trades Council on the Twin Cities campus, and Eddie Walker, Associate Professor, Sports and Recreation Management in the Department of Business and President of the University Education Association at the Crookston campus. Are they all?
Yeah, they're
great. Thank you. Great. As we start this panel, I want to outline some ground rules. Today's hearing is about hearing from the employees and about their experience as labor represented employees at the University of Minnesota. And we're so happy to have them here and to receive their input. During the discussion, we need to be respectful of the unique relationship that we have with labor represented employees and refrain from discussing anything that would typically be addressed during collective bargaining sessions, including proposals related to wages, hours, or terms and conditions of employment. If we start to move to that area, I can jump in and shift the conversation back to where we're supposed to be. With that, our panelists for today are joining us, and we're excited to hear from them.
All right.
Hi, welcome. Thank you so much. And have a seat, and then please get started whenever you're ready.
All right. Chair Gully, members of the committee. Again, my name is Christina Gallup. I'm an associate professor of Earth and Environmental Science at University of Minnesota Duluth and president of our faculty union. I want to thank you for giving us the opportunity to come today. And I specifically want to share some of the ways that our faculty, important ways that our faculty contribute to the university's mission. I also, in the brief time that I have, want to give you our perspective on some challenges and opportunities that the university and our members share as we work together. So start out with a little history about the University Education Association. It was established in 1981, a long time ago, so we've been union faculty for a long time. It represents tenure track, tenured, and term faculty with an appointment of 35% or higher. So not every single faculty member at UMD is union represented, but those who have 35% appointment or more. We have 269 members on our campus. Our goal has always been to advocate for good working conditions for our faculty and fair treatment. In terms of our contributions to the university's mission, the university is its faculty, right? We are the core of the university. We are long-term stewards of the university. Many of us stay for many decades, right? And administrations come and go, and we're the consistent force because we develop and deliver the curriculum, develop and conduct research that gives the university its name, provide mentorship, and engage with community industry to spread our message and our expertise. I want to focus on 3 challenges and opportunities that we face. As you notice in my report, I actually had 4, and that included compensation. In the interest of 5 minutes, I will leave that for you to read in the report. But I want to focus on workload, term faculty working conditions, and negotiations briefly. So in terms of workload, a balanced workload is key for faculty, right? It ensures our ability to contribute successfully to that mission, do all the things we just talked about, but it also affects our students, right? Faculty working conditions are student learning conditions. So interestingly, in the campus climate report that came out in 2023, 36.7% of UMD faculty feel their teaching workload is distributed fairly and equitably in their college. So we have work to do, right? And we are actually doing that work. Our last contract, apparently the first 18 hours, or the first 12 of the 18 hours, tried to find an agreement on workload. And because they couldn't do that in that mediated session, they'd established this joint workload work group, right? And we have been working since October. It is a joint venture between the administration and the UEA, 5 members on each team and a co-chair. So our EVCA ropers and myself co-chair the group. And we've been working to look at a new workload system and hoping to have one in place by December 2025. We are entertaining the idea of the current contract has us just with teaching as our workload to expanding that to include research and service, right? We've got a lot of work to do, and it's been a great group to work with. I also want to focus a little bit on our term faculty. In the last negotiations, we succeeded in achieving term faculty promotions, which is huge for our term faculty. We have many. 37% of eligible faculty are term faculty in our union. Many have been at UMB for longer than 10 years. And I went through all the people who had been here for 25 years on the slide the chancellor provided for our awards ceremony. 11 term faculty were on that list. 29% of the people on that list were term faculty. So term is kind of a misnomer. It sounds like they're here short term, but many are here for a long, long time and are contributing to the university's mission. 2 of them were on the 30 years of service, right? So 26 term faculty were promoted to teaching associate professor or senior instructor this year, which is significant and says what good work they do. Also, they win awards. Paul Bates is somebody I go to the Bahamas with and teach a study abroad with in biology. He won the system-wide Horst P. Morse Outstanding Contributions to Undergraduate Education. We have Rebecca Boyle got a Chancellor's Award for Excellence in Teaching, and a faculty member in Geography got an Office of Sustainability Inspiration Award. So they're doing really good work. We do have opportunities, right? With this in mind of how much they contribute, they are going by year-to-year contracts, and this is stressful for anybody. We would like to see multi-year contracts. We've tried to get these in the negotiations before. We are going to keep trying, and we'd love to tie those to promotions, and we'd love to see something like rolling contracts, which other universities have. Right? It'd be great to give them job security, and it would help students because their working conditions are student learning conditions. In terms of negotiations, communication has sometimes been a challenge. And it's really important to us, to the negotiating team and to the faculty watching the negotiations to feel that the people that we're negotiating with understand and value faculty and our contributions and the role they play. And we have not always felt that during the negotiations. So it's an opportunity to do better, right? To bargain and to achieve the common goal. We have definitely the same goal of having an outstanding university. Instead of positional bargaining, having bargaining that's working towards a common goal would really benefit us all. So thank you, and I will pass it on to Eddie Walker. And let's see, do I just exit? Just minimize that.
Thank you, Chair Gully, members of the committee. My name is Eddie Walker, UEAC president, and I just want to provide some of our perspective from the Crookston campus to go along with the background of the UEA as a whole. For Crookston campus, we have a total of 39 members. 37 are tenured or tenure track, with 2 of them are term faculty, which is similar to the term faculty on the Duluth campus. But we make up 64% of our faculty assembly. This covers anyone with 75% teaching appointment or more. And we have professional, administrative, instructional staff who make up the rest of the faculty assembly, who teach more credits than we do, but we all fall in that same boat. As far as how we meet the mission, all the faculty on our campus, we cover all three areas: research, discovery, teaching and learning, and outreach and public service. As far as research and discovery, we all are presenting at conferences, whether it be national or international conferences, publishing in journals. Some are very high impact. But with our campus being undergraduate only, it is essential that we take part in undergraduate research. I know for myself, this has been, when I was tenure track, this was an important part of my research agenda, is involving undergraduate students, one of whom we were able to actually get a presentation at Switzerland, an international conference, as well as getting a publication, which was not only helpful for me, but helpful for the student in the future. As far as teaching and learning, this is a majority of what we do. We teach 24 credits per year. This is the highest workload in the system. On top of that, we're responsible for program curriculum development. I am the only faculty member in my program with about 55 students. And basically, I have to do all the development, program development, assessment, working towards accreditation for COSMO, which is sport management specific organization. So I do all of the assessment in there, as well as we do a big load of advising. And then finally, outreach and public service. We not only provide service to the university as far as serving on certain committees, things like that, whether it be on the Crookston campus or the system as a whole. We also provide outreach to community with respect to maybe technical assistance reports, engage community research, as well as the industry, where we will serve on journal editorial boards. I myself review for multiple journals, as well as serving as a guest associate editor on a journal. Some of the challenges that we've had with respect to negotiations, each campus is different. So the things that are important on our campus may be different than on Duluth or others. So we do engage and meet and confer with administration. This is the opportunity for us to discuss these specific items that are important to our faculty. When we come to negotiations for the contract, this now becomes a bigger group. So labor relations from the Twin Cities leads this. And this is there times when sometimes we have to put some of our items on the back seat to come to a larger agreement. One of the big things that is important for our faculty is definitely something that we're interested in is the faculty workload. I mentioned that we teach 24 credits per year. We have had in the past where we have tried to get it down to at least 21 credits. Even at one last class can be helpful. And just for myself, I'm in a business department on the Crookston campus. There's tenured faculty in the Carlson School of Management. They would teach 10 credits per year. We still must complete research and service requirements, while there's no expectation that we would be able to drop that low. But we do still have these requirements, and some of the opportunities that we can have available to us is we can create this true feel of being a system and identify how the campus goals, they may differ, but we still are all working towards meeting this mission. Another thing that's important to sort of understand is that expectations have changed on the Crookston campus when it comes to tenure track faculty. In the past, teaching was such a big part, there was not as high an emphasis put on research. Obviously, service was going to be important no matter what, but you didn't have to produce as many publications, to go to as many conferences and things like that. Now that has sort of changed. We have much more stringent requirements when we're looking at research. We have this expectation that you're going to be publishing, sometimes even high impact journals, more so than in the past, going to national, international conferences. Those are some of the feedback that we're giving to our tenure track faculty when we're moving them through the tenure process. And that's difficult to do with a heavy teaching load. Since our teaching load has remained the same, there are some ways that we can address that. Faculty can request research release. And this one negative here, it's great that we have this opportunity to explore research release, but it also is dependent upon the ability to cover classes as well as budget constraints. And so there's this, with more tenure track faculty coming in and this higher expectation, we're having more research release requests than we have in the past. Just as an example, many requests are having to be denied. Just as an example, for academic year 2025, 58 credits were requested and only 36 could be granted. And that's not saying that there's that this is a negative thing. I mean, we are seeing that faculty are trying to take advantage of these research release requests. The hope for future negotiations is that we can try to help manage these changing expectations, make these workloads a little bit more manageable without having to request release. Especially we've hired quite a few new tenure track faculty, and while they are rightfully so getting preference for research release because they're just getting started, this is a good way to get them kind of in the culture. But we also would like to make this more manageable for all faculty, and that way they don't have to necessarily request that release. And so with that, I want to thank you for your time, and I will hand it over to my colleague, Katie, who will continue.
I don't have a PowerPoint. You're all good.
Oh, well, that's
Thanks. Thank you, Chair Gully and the members of the committee. My name is Katie LaPlante, and I'm the general foreman for the carpenters in U Construction here on the Twin Cities campus. U Construction represents every trade except for elevators and sprinkler fitters, but we have exclusive contracts with Nassif and Schindler to take care of those two jobs. I've personally been a carpenter for 15 years, and I've been at the U for 5. And I have to say, my job at the U might be the best construction job I've ever had in the last 15 years of my career as a carpenter. Before I was a carpenter, I worked at St. Mary's University down in Winona as the Director of Activities and Service. And when I left that job, for various reasons, I wanted to stay in either the nonprofit sector or the university sector. That was always my long-term goal. And of course, I left in 2010 when the recession was at its highest during President Obama's tenure. And I grabbed a hold of the first job I could find on a nonprofit website, which was in construction. And they said, "Can you hang sheetrock?" And I said, "Of course I can." I couldn't hang sheetrock. I quickly learned how to hang sheetrock, that's for sure. So fast forward 10 years later, and I feel like my goal of getting back into a university setting actually came true. So how does what U Construction does fits into the mission of the university? And it's pretty simple. We build, we keep safe, and we respond to the emergencies in the spaces where students are learning. Just this last year in mechanical engineering, we rebuilt an entire laboratory where the researcher is hopefully going to find an alternative for jet fuel for airplanes. And I can say we built that lab. Just yesterday, we found out that Middlebrook Hall had a water event that took out 10 of their dorm rooms. We're going to rebuild those rooms and make them nice and clean and safe for the students that are going to be moving in there in the fall. A big part of what we do is campus safety, making sure the buildings are secure, door hardware, securing doors, card readers, you name it. We do it all in-house. I know that the goal in-house is to do anything that's $1 million or less. Anything else has to go out to public bid. And I think we do a pretty good job in construction to meet those goals. All jobs have their challenges. I would happily take the challenges here at the U over any other commercial construction site. My biggest challenges is meeting deadlines because we're working in spaces where other people have to continue to do their own work. Sometimes we can't start till 9 o'clock in the morning because students are sleeping in the next room. Sometimes it's really hard to find parking and we all have our work trucks that we have to get around campus in. Those pale in comparison to what the commercial construction is like. I see in the future a challenge might be, because we're fully T&M. If we don't work, we don't have jobs, we don't get paid. T&M is time and material. So if budgets are getting cut or if, the price of materials are increasing, that means our work's going to slow down. And it's a real concern for tradespeople, especially when we're talking about tariffs. But luckily, the U has been very good to us for the last 5 years, to us in general, but I don't see any issue moving forward in maintaining a solid relationship with the university with each of the different trades on campus. So thank you for your time. I appreciate that. And I think we're opening up to questions if you have any for us.
We are, and I just want to say, first of all, thank you so much for being here and for telling us about your work environment and your work on each of your campuses. I will go right to questions, but I just want to say that I was really grateful that we were able to get folks from 3 different campuses to talk about their experiences. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Chair Gilly and members of the panel. And thank you for your work. And my dad tried to teach me how to hang sheetrock, and he told me I better go to college. Anyway, so congratulations on picking that up. But I was a member of UEA at Duluth, and in the College of Liberal Arts, it's kind of like even if you're a full or tenured professor, it's kind of a labor of love. I have a friend who sent me a note he got in 2017, and at the time he was a tenured professor. He got a note from the university saying that they were pleased to tell him that he was qualified for the University of Minnesota Medical Cost Relief Program for lower income employees. And this was designed for families who may be struggling financially. So anyway, he was now a full professor, but takes a lot of outside work in order to get by. And I don't know if there's a lot of folks in that situation. I know I would see half the admins from UMD working other jobs, and whether it was at Costco or other places. I'm just wondering if you have any comments on that status of being an outstate professor. And I know it's different for different schools, but if you have any general comments on that.
Thank you for that question, Regent Johnson and Chair Gully. So our faculty across the country are often underpaid. It's a labor of love, as you were saying, right? For the kind of work we do have, especially some term faculty who teach students, and then those students go out to entry-level jobs that make more money than they get paid to teach them. So we have been working to address compensation. As I said, I put it in the report, but didn't have so thank you for your question. Bring it back up. We have made some progress with our contract in terms of addressing compensation. We got making sure that everybody was at 75% or higher of a ratio based on, it's called a compar ratio, of what the comparables are to your job code at comparable universities. And so we got everybody up to that just last year. And there are some people who got like $10,000 or $11,000 raises because of that. So some people were way under, right? Now the other thing that we achieved was a salary equity study that is funded. So because our contract took a little while to get in place, right? We ended up through most of the first year before the contract was over. So it was retroactive. And now we just finished the second year. We have 1 more year of our current 3-year contract. And for each of the 2 years, there's salary equity money, and so there has to be a salary equity study done. And that is, the contract language says, at the discretion of the Executive Vice Chancellor. Our Executive Vice Chancellor is very interested in partnership and is bringing HR and us together to talk about that study and what's going to be in there. What are the criterion to figure out if somebody is long-term underpaid and bring that salary equity up. And there is, because of the contract, a pool of money to address that. So that is moving forward. But salary is always an issue, and especially for the term faculty. We had some term faculty who qualified for food stamps.
Thank you, Regent Gully. Yeah. So question I have, so the $1 million threshold, I mean, should we be doing larger projects? And then do we have the capabilities? And I would think, the timeliness of that and the ability to keep more in-house would be better for everybody and we could get stuff done. So it seems like it looks like we have, what, $8 billion worth of deferred, what I heard today. And so what are your thoughts there? Because I mean, you bring up an interesting point because if 8 dorm rooms flood and you want to get it done tomorrow and you hire somebody on the outside, you're paying a lot for that because they're booked out. But if you can handle some of that stuff ourselves, that would be money in our pocket. I just want to hear your thoughts on whether we can do that, whether we should do it.
It's a great question.
Yeah.
$1 million or less would include all of the trades that are on any of the projects. I think we could, especially as the cost of material and the cost of wages increase. Our biggest hurdles are trucks and tools. And honestly, especially when you're talking about demolition, the appropriate demolition trucks. We just don't have those sorts of things on hand. And because we are funded a lot of these projects are funded by the government, it has to go out for public bid. And sometimes if people have those pieces of equipment, their bid would come in quite under what our bid would come in. I think that the goal of the current department heads of constructions is to move that number up. We've been very proactive, I would say, in the last 6 months of making sure we get those jobs in-house more often. But our ability to respond to emergencies, especially water event emergencies, is like our bread and butter. It's what we do best because we're on campus, we can get there fast, we can solve the problem quickly. In this case, it was a leaky pipe behind a wall that they didn't know was there. And then it burst finally, and it took out 10 rooms. And the fact that we can do that all in-house because we have our own abatement team that can take care of any mold issues. And then you have carpenters, electricians, plumbers that can all go in and do that work quickly. And because we're self-insured too, it just makes it easier if you do it in-house versus taking it off-site to a different contractor. But yeah, I do see that number moving up in the future, definitely. And the bigger we get in construction, that just means we can buy more trucks and afford more tools and those sorts of things.
I just want to say I always learn so much just listening to all of you speak about different stuff. It's really, and I think there are some opportunities there. Just, I mean, as a farmer, you always wanted to buy your own combine and your own planter because you didn't want to be the last person combined or the last one planted. So, it's like you're kind of at the mercy of everybody else. So
Yeah, that's true.
appreciate your comments and I would push that.
Other questions from
Last one, Robin, yeah. Yeah, thank you. And Katie, you brought this up that, it's kind of like where you spend your time and what tools do you have to do it. But I'm going to ask the other two too, when you're doing this workload management piece, it sounds like a lot of what you're saying is a lot more time is needed, too many credits, too many to spend the time to do other things, not a recognition of the research and outreach as much, so it sounds like more time. Are there also tools that you need to support that in different ways? Or, as we always look at our organizations as like, okay, it's time, and do you have the resources you need to support that time wisely?
Well, do you mind Regent Wheeler, Chair Gully, I'll answer that question in a way that you might not anticipate, which is that one of the things the university has been doing over time that drives faculty crazy is putting things on our plate that used to be done by our administrative staff. For example, if we travel, we have to fill out our own Chrome River thing, right? And if you do a lot of traveling because you're kind of a big person in research and you're doing a lot of presentations, it takes an enormous amount of your time. That is not something that our lead research should be spending 5-10 hours a week trying to do Chrome River. So yes, that's a tool. In some ways, it's a resource that we would really, really benefit from having that taken back off of our plate.
Thank you for the question, Regent Wheeler, Chair Gully. I think from our perspective, having that time is important because that's one of the things with research release. And outside of the contract, we have these protocols meetings where we basically will kind of have things that are not officially part of the contract that we'll agree with our administration. And that's one of the things is with the research release is that, well, we can't get that for overload because it's the important, that's having the time. So you can't teach your credits and then still get the research release on top of that. And so I think that's something that's helpful for us is similar to what Dr. Gallup was saying is that we have to have time to do these things. So yes, having less time in the classroom can be helpful to do more things outside, to do more research, writing the papers, because that obviously takes time. Going through revisions, sometimes it's a hurry up and wait, because I remember one paper spent 300 days in review with the journal. So it's just kind of sitting there, okay, I can't do anything with it until you give me a decision. So that's something to be very helpful from our point of view. Is have that time. And then sometimes we just can't get it. There are times that we've had faculty that will get the research release, and then something unexpected comes up, and then say they have to pick up another class. Well, now they lose that release. And so now the time has been taken back away from them.
That's helpful. Thank you very much. Thank you, Regent Gully.
Regent Davenport, did you have one?
Yeah, thank you.
The last question from Regent.
Okay, because this conversation's triggered me thinking on both sides. One, as I've been a faculty and regular full-time faculty, and I've been an administrator assigning faculty loads. So the whole load management, if you could solve this, I mean, that would be amazing. Because on one hand, I totally get what you're talking about in the teaching loads, that you'd like to have more time for these other things. But my administrative hat says, okay, I want you to do those things. I can give you release time, but then I have to come up with the money, the budget to backfill for those courses. Then depending on, I used to teach classes, I don't know, I hope they don't do this anymore. Maybe they do 150 students in a big giant lecture hall versus I've also taught courses of 5 students. So, and maybe this is rhetorical, you know, what is that solution on workload balance? Because it's like whack-a-mole. You whack one problem down, you get another one popping up and another one here and there. And I think that's one of the challenges moving forward budgetarily is how do we do this without more resources? I mean, I can see both ends of that.
Regent Davenport, Chair Gully, so our workload work group has been really digging into that. And one of the things that I would put to you as a potential solution to that is adding flexibility. So right now in my college, Swenson College of Science and Engineering, our workloads are 40%, 50% research, 40%, 50% teaching, 40% research, 10% service, right? Fixed. If we added flexibility to that, so that your research had to be between 20 and 50 or 60%, each one had a range, right? So guardrails, so nobody can be just 100% research because we can't have nobody teaching. But we give some flexibility there. And then each faculty member works with their chair to make sure that all the classes in the department are covered, but also gives ability, if somebody's got a big research year coming up, that theirs is a bit bigger, their percent research, and then the merit would go with that, right? What the percentage is. So trying to add in flexibility to really incorporate what our jobs are, because they actually change year to year what you're focusing on. So, so I think that's one of the ways we might be able to address that.
So at the end of the day, it's even.
Yeah, so everything gets covered, but you have flexibility, individual flexibility that is in writing.
Regent Davenport, Chair Gully, thank you for the question. And I think building on that, we do have faculty who write research grants, and they may not be very large, but then there's still this expectation of they've now got to produce, and then where do they get the time to do it? And then sometimes that's where they kind of count on this research release, so they have this time, and if they can't get it, or if it gets taken back because, like you said, if things have to be covered, we have to cover it, and it's that delicate balance. That's kind of important part is making sure that they're having the time so it doesn't look bad on them, or I guess by extension the university, that, oh, well, we just gave you money, but you can't produce. And so I think maybe on top of that, as far as resources, and really this is something that there's no control over it, but it has been suggested that maybe in some of these research grants you're writing in release. With like I know for my discipline, there's not a lot of money out there for research because I don't need a lot of money to cost anything to produce a survey and send it out and interpret it and write it up. But for some of these others, then maybe they can get that money, and then there are some that say no, you can't write those kind of things into the grant. So while it's something to be helpful for resource-wise, it's something that also is out of their control.
Thank you all so much for being here and for talking about your work. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. No, I'm good. Thank you.
Our next item is an update from the university's efforts to invest in the workforce system-wide. And to present this item, let me welcome Vice Provost for Faculty and Academic Affairs, Beth Lewis, and Senior Director of Total Rewards Management, Total Rewards, Mary from Pullman Cole. And we'll start with Vice President Horstman, who's going to provide some opening remarks.
Thank you, Chair Gully, and regents of the committee. We have an update on the progress of the Workforce Reinvestment Governance Committee. I'd like to acknowledge and thank all of the colleagues we have in the University Senate for raising these priorities. I'd also like to thank the members of our University Senate and University administration that have staffed the committee's 4 work groups that covered compensation, benefits, faculty success, and staff success. The members of these teams have met consistently over the past year to deliver a prioritized set of recommendations that you will hear about today. From today, these recommendations go to the president, and then they will be brought forward as part of the annual budgeting process as we build a timeline for what can be implemented, what is a priority, and what may not be in that immediate time frame. And that, of course, is based on current budget constraints and what we see in the future. So with that, I'll ask Mary and Beth to go forward. Thank you.
Chair Gully, Regents of the board, today we'd like to provide you with an update on the progress of the Workforce Reinvestment Governance Committee in response to the items requested by the University Senate's Workforce Reinvestment Resolution. The recommendations we'll be highlighting remain under consideration throughout the month of June as part of the annual budget discussion, so the recommendations may therefore change before being submitted to President Cunningham for review. As we shared this past fall, President Cunningham established the Workforce Reinvestment Governance Committee, or the WRGC, which has been operating this 2024-25 academic year. Four work groups composed of members from university administration and the civil service, P&A, and faculty populations have reviewed roughly 30 remaining recommended actions from the Workforce Reinvestment Task Force, reprioritize each of those recommended actions in light of new employee requests and new regulatory requirements, and have submitted the recommendations to the WRGC executive sponsors, who are now assessing these recommendations and setting priorities across the 4 work groups based on available funding. The WRGC work groups have been highly collaborative in their approach. Voices from shared governance, topical experts, and administration have been meeting regularly to discuss and prioritize the remaining items in the resolution and task force report. Each of the work groups provided a written mid-semester update to the WRGC executive sponsors for their consideration. That includes Executive Vice President and Provost Rachel Croson, Finance Executive Vice President Greg Goldman, and Vice President of Human Resources Ken Horstman. As noted earlier, a comprehensive set of recommendations will be finalized in the coming weeks and submitted to President Cunningham. The next few slides will walk through with you the priorities and recommendations of each of those 4 work groups. So first is the compensation work group. The comp work group discussed each of the compensation priorities and assigned a rank order to the items that were requested. The first priority identified by the group was to increase postdoctoral associate salary floors from $56,000 annually to $61,008 as required by the National Research Service Award and the National Institute of Health. This is a required action that's already in process. The second priority was to increase salary floors for teaching specialists and lecturers and implement a minimum per credit hour payment for those paid per credit. If there was money remaining, the team agreed that the next focus should be to continue to increase civil service and P&A salaries above $22.25 per hour. These 3 items were selected as the highest priority 1 needs. The compensation work group then outlined priority 2 needs, which include budgeting anywhere from 0.25% to 1% of salaries in fiscal year 2026 to provide market-based pay adjustments for roles that are deemed to be most behind market. The compensation work group indicated that the remaining priority 2 items on this slide would ideally be provided in addition to the 1% market adjustment pool. However, the group agreed that if the university could not financially afford these priority 2 items in addition to the general market adjustment pool, that these topics should be the highest priority considerations when market adjustment funds are allocated out by campuses, colleges, and units. So these items include bringing salaries for P&A employees in levels 5, 6, and 7 of the research job family to at least $61,008, which is that new salary floor for postdoctoral associates. And likewise, raising salary floors for faculty to at least $61,008, again, to align with that same postdoc salary floor. And then finally, increasing salaries for civil service supervisors who are paid less than their direct reports. So the university duly acknowledges the financial uncertainty we will experience in the next fiscal year, as well as the importance of investing as much as we can in our workforce. As a result, postdoc salary floors have been moved, and the market adjustment pool is currently budgeted at 1% of salaries, which is the largest market adjustment pool to date, capable of making some very meaningful progress on the compensation topics outlined on this slide. We don't believe that we have room in our fiscal year 2026 budget to fund the other pay priorities in addition to this 1% market pool. However, we have sent guidance to our campuses, colleges, and units that they are to use their pools to first address both the priority 1 and priority 2 items identified by the comp work group. It is possible that some areas within the university, we may find the dollars required for these increases actually exceed the funds that are available, but we will work with those administrative teams to identify how their market adjustment pools can be leveraged to provide the greatest positive effect to the greatest number of employees possible. The comp work group is going to continue to meet for the first part of the summer and will discuss the university's approach for awarding annual pay increases with any adjustments occurring in fiscal year 2027. We're also finalizing a timeline for implementing our remaining market refinements and anticipate completing the education job family in August here. And we'll be working on refinements for faculty at Morris and faculty at a few colleges on the Twin Cities campus for fiscal year 2026. Finally, the work group will discuss opportunities for additional supervisory education in fiscal year 2026 regarding pay principles, strategies, and range placement. So next, the benefits work group recommended that the university perform benchmarking on the prevalence of tuition discount programs for dependents among other higher education institutions and a cost-benefit analysis on that topic as well. The team emphasized the importance of determining how the university will fund the mandatory Minnesota paid leave program that will be going into place for Minnesota employers in January of 2026, and acknowledged the effect that that program may have on our ability to fund other desired benefit changes. Finally, the team recommended that the university research no-cost or low-cost ways to adjust civil service vacation accruals to offer more vacation to those with 1 to 5 years of service if benchmarking were to indicate that we are offering less time away than other Twin Cities employers. The work group concluded that before any benefit changes are made, the university should conduct an employee survey of benefits to ensure that the proposed program changes are responsive to what the preponderance of our employees would want. The group agreed, however, that this type of survey should only be conducted if the university determines it's able to offer substantial changes or substitutions to our benefits, and that our employees would also be ready for that degree of change.
Chair Gully, members of the committee, the faculty and P&A instructor success work group made significant progress in several areas that will be reflected in our final report. In the interest of time, I will highlight just a few areas. First, there was a need to clarify when to appoint contract faculty versus P&A lecturers and teaching specialists. We are now enforcing the use of a contract faculty form so we can closely monitor the use of contract faculty appointments to ensure they adhere to the tenure policy. We are also exploring the possibility of creating 3 levels of promotion for P&A lecturers and teaching specialists to match the levels of promotion for contract faculty. Related to part-time instructors, we are exploring IT strategies to ensure that part-time instructors can retain access to email, libraries, and Canvas over the summer. A third area to highlight is equitable workload distribution. This semester, our office worked with 6 departments to improve their workload distribution processes. We will take what we learned from this project and systematically disseminate these strategies to other department chairs. I would also like to highlight the Civil Service and P&A Staff Success Work Group. The new supervisor orientation and other training opportunities were updated to enhance supervisory skill sets and competencies such as managing employee workloads, understanding options for additional pay when employees are taking on substantial work, and managing remote and hybrid workers. Training and FAQs were created to better prepare employees and supervisors on the reclassification process. The work with flexibility information was enhanced to guide supervisors regarding expectations of team members and provide clarity for what is supervisor-driven versus policy-based or legally bound practices, such as working out of state-related policies and travel costs for travel to campus. As next steps, the WRGC work groups are continuing to meet through June to finalize their recommendations on any remaining workforce resolution items. At that point, their work will be completed. The executive sponsors will then prioritize across the 4 work groups based on the budget secured for the workforce reinvestments, considering any other competing budget requirements, priorities, or needs. They will discuss their recommendations with President Cunningham, and final decisions will be made by President Cunningham. In closing, we have 2 questions we'd like to pose to you. As a special committee on university workforce, what do you identify as your top priorities for investment for our employees? And with limited funding, are there trade-offs that might be made to achieve certain priorities? With that, we welcome your questions on the progress to date.
And thank you so much. Thank you. And especially having this on the agenda to follow up on about a year ago, right? So I struggle with a lot of this because there's so many sides to these issues. all driving toward the same goal of having good quality education, serving our students, and meeting our mission. That second one, with limited funding, are there trade-offs? So I worry that when we increase, say, the postdoc salary floor, is the trade-off less postdocs? When we increase, take any of those, if we increase this side, are we looking at fewer employees? Then we get back to that whole balancing workload issue, and it's back to whack-a-mole again. So has there been discussion about unintended consequences maybe, or consequences of you only have so much in your budget? If you do this,
So, I can take that. So, Chair Gully, Regent Davenport. Yes, so all of that has to be balanced. And I think I've worked at a few different places before coming to the U, and wherever I've worked, there's always a question of, do we keep more people and pay a little less competitively? Do we try to work towards a more competitive stance? And does that mean fewer people? It doesn't always, but sometimes it needs to. And there isn't really a right or wrong answer, but there's probably a right answer for the time that you're operating under. And I think the university right now has come to the point where there is a feeling that we have, and I believe information to show that we have probably underinvested in our workforce and our salaries, not in all places, but in some pockets of the organization. I think that needs to be shored up. We need to make steps to get that corrected. So I think for right now, we've set this budget for the next year. The items that we're recommending are within that budget framework. So everything that Julie Tonneson talked about this morning, she has set out what we have available. And for example, bringing up those postdoc floors, we rank ordered the items that you saw on that sheet, and there are more items that need attending to than that. So we took out of those items, which are the first item, what's second, what's third, and it was again a cross-functional team. And a lot of discussion, not always everyone agreeing on exactly the first, second, third, fourth order priority, but we just started with the first, second, and came to agreement as a group, and kind of snapped the line where we knew the budget would carry us, and then said, at this point now, we understand we don't have as much money as we wanted, but the 1% fund, I think, can pretty effectively address those remaining priority 1 item and 2 items. So those were the things that we felt we need to make those changes. And then the answer is, will it result in fewer individuals in those classifications or others? It may. But we felt that those items needed to be fixed and addressed first, second, third. And the items, again, are, we believe, able to be covered in our budget and with that 1% fund that's built into the budget.
And that's a good answer. And the work of your group is really well thought through. And I just thank everyone, you and everyone in your work groups that have worked hard on it. It's difficult.
Thank you. Thanks, Regent Gully. So to answer that second question, I always look at, so in our businesses, we have employees and we can't offer them everything they want, but we can give them employee discounts, right? And they appreciate that, and they use all of our stuff. And so I was surprised to hear that employees at the U didn't get discounted classes or whatever, especially where we have capacity. I know this is I'm probably going on to a landmine here, but where we have capacity, let's say there's 20 students in the class and there's only 18 signed up, we have capacity for 2 more, no additional cost. And so if you can give those spots to somebody at 50% off, you're getting some revenue for those spots. At the same time, the employees are saving some money. And so I think there's got to be a way to make that match up. I know it's a tremendously big puzzle, but, if you can't pay in compensation, can you pay in kind, And I think there's a lot of people that would really appreciate that. And we have some campuses that could benefit that more from others. Now, we can't say, okay, Carlson's got too many students, we can't give that out, but other colleges have capacity and maybe, people can start getting credits for classes there or something. And so I would like to see that explored more. I told that to other people. And so I know there's been studies done on it, whatever, but I'd like to see more about that. Some colleges do that, so. Yeah.
Teacher Gully, Regent Hipsch. So we do have the Regents tuition benefit for our employees. Employees that don't have a first degree can get their tuition paid for wholly by the Regents tuition benefit. If you have a first degree, you can get a second, third degree, or master's degree at 75% off. So we do have that discount, but it's the question too about the dependents.
That's what I was talking about.
Yes, yes. And so we do want to do a cost benefit analysis on that. That's one of the recommendations, but we just want to take a look at that. And we've had the work done in the past, but it's always been a faculty group that did it. And in the second case, it was an administrative group that did it. And we're like, let's do it together because it all comes down to your assumptions, the assumptions that you put into the model. And let's build that together. Let's collaborate on that. So we all agree on the inputs so we can agree on the output of what we find.
Sure.
So that's what we're recommending. And your point is really good. And just to put in a plug that I agree with you that you can't always do everything on the pay side. The university does have just really competitive benefits on our medical plan and our retirement plan in particular. But yeah, as much as we can leverage those types of programs, that can make a big difference for people and make us a really attractive employer.
Can I just mention one more thing? I think we have a net migration of freshman students leaving, our first year students leaving the state of around 6,000 people a year. So M-State and the University of Minnesota, whatever, if we could get that net migration to zero, that's 6,000 more workers every year coming into our system. So, I mean, I think everyone could buy into that. And we have capacity. I mean, not only us, but other places do too. So anyway, so thank you.
I'm going to go to the last question with President Cunningham, but I just wanted to mention, because I believe that this is true, so just for clarification though, because we were talking about contingent faculty, that contingent, and I assume term faculty, though I'm not completely sure about this, are not eligible for the Regents scholarship at this point. If I'm wrong about that, please clarify, but I just want to mention it because I think it's important to say.
So Chair Gully, if they are employed with us, if they are an employee of the University of Minnesota, they are eligible.
Chair Gully, Regents, members of the committee. Yes. So, but it depends on the. Do you have to be benefits eligible for the 50% time, certain percentage
Yes.
time? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. That's is it 50% or 75%? You have to be 50%. Okay.
Then for
50%. Okay.
benefits eligibility, so there are people with a lower appointment than that, right?
Right. So if you're teaching a 4-credit course on a part-time basis, you would not be eligible. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if this has changed, but I know 1 year, I think to get to 50% when I was teaching, I had to teach 21 credits in the year, I think. And I think maybe that year I might have been eligible. So I don't know if the terms have changed, but I just want to add that because I think it's an important part of the conversation. And so if it's changed or if I'm wrong, I don't mean to misrepresent that in any way.
No, it's well said. Every job code, every type of employee is eligible, but yes, very good that it's based on being benefit eligible. So working up to a certain appointment. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Thank you. Please, President Cunningham.
Yeah, first of all, thank you so much for the work. I think the background and hearing about this work over the year and all the people that got it going before this has really, benefited me in my administration this year as we focus on a need to have a well-supported, qualified workforce that feels adequately compensated. And I think that's really important. The work of this group going on in the background and the needs that is brought forth before, certainly colored the way we thought about presenting a budget this year. And so these kinds of things, are only possible with the budget that passes this year in this way. And these are the kinds of things that we can do to help our workforce move forward, with the budget as we've proposed, which obviously has the choices in it that we discussed this morning. But I know, and Regent Gully, you and I have talked some about before, and I appreciate both the recommendations in there around the required things like the postdocs that have to happen, but also a recognition that we have multiple types of adjunct contract, different levels, at different schools for different things, and that there is an opportunity in your recommendations to start to look at those a little bit more holistically and understand how this is part of our workforce, and how do we also make those folks understand what a benchmark is, and at least learn and see if there's things that are possible to be done, and not leave them out of the discussions of our workforce as an important part. But I do think that 1% component is an important way that we can start to make adjustments this year. And then, I'll remind folks that with this, we're building in our budget, ongoing recurring funds for workforce reinvestment. That's part of our budget this year. And then that would help us to begin to chip away at these things, which we won't solve in 6 months or a year, but over multiple of the next years, we can start to get to a place where we feel like we're in a better, more holistic place across these employee groups. And that is what our budget is proposed this year. With it, we have recommendations then on how to proceed, which is also very helpful. Regent Hips, into the landmine for which you walked. I'll just mention I will look for the benchmarking, but there are a few public universities of our size that can afford to provide dependent care. Having been a public faculty school professor with 5 children, believe me, I looked at this a fair amount in my own benchmarking around the country, and most public universities, especially that are as comprehensive of our size, if we think about my 5 children and your several children and Ken's children and Mary's children, we start to have a cost for the dependents that becomes a balancing question of, would we prefer to support, let's say, adjunct faculty who are 50% or less, or what do we want to try to support the dependents of our faculty? It is a retention issue. Certainly many of my peers left for private institutions where they would have had their children fully funded through college. So it is an extra benefit. It's a matter of where we spend our money on our benefits. And if we spend our money there, then we probably can't spend our money, for example, on the Regent professorships for the faculty that we do have. So these are all just choices, but it's a big number there when you add up the dependence of a faculty size. That's the size that we have, or a staff size that we have with our number of employees, and multiply that by a couple of kids each. It's a lot of tuition, and it's unfortunately not there's real costs there. It's not all just not cost, but I encourage people to do that deep analysis, and I'd love to come out with a different answer, but that's a tough one.
Thank you both so much. We really appreciate the update, and it was a great presentation, and all the work that everyone has done on this committee. So thank you. We just have a couple of information items before we wrap up. Vice President Horstman, anything to highlight?
Just noting on the status of the union list, nothing really has changed there. We are in negotiation with both Teamsters and AFSCME currently. The law enforcement labor represented employees have given notice that we will start to negotiate. We expect that later this summer, early fall. We are working with the medical resident union. Both sides are developing and establishing their bargaining teams. We anticipate August is perhaps the first bargaining date. And we also have received notice that AFSCME is now representing, I think it's less than 200, but law school student workers. So that is in process, but that's very recent, and I don't really have an update on the progress of that after that notification. So that's all to report there at the moment.
Thank you so much. Any discussion on those? Okay. There being no additional business before the special committee, we stand adjourned.